If you were wondering why we had extra candles on the altar, it's because it was just as 10 o'clock Mass was starting that we got light. There was light. We celebrated Mass in the dark at 4:15 last evening, and we also did so for 8 o'clock. And it was kind of cool because as the sun was rising, our beautiful stained glass windows were kind of the only things you could see. So it allowed us to appreciate the beauty of our church a little more. But we have today the Advent figure of St. John the Baptist, and he's saying that one mightier than he will come, and he will bring a sense of judgment with him, because he will take, it says here, his winnowing fan in his hand to clear his threshing floor. So what he's talking about is that in order to gather the wheat in his barn, you lift it up and you allow the wheat to kind of be separated from the chaff, and the chaff would blow away, and then you would burn that chaff and then take the wheat into his barn. And so John is using that as Jesus, the imagery of Jesus taking the wheat, his disciples, into himself. And those who reject him are the chaff, right? Those who refuse to follow the way of love. Love God with all your heart, soul, and might, and love your neighbor as yourself. And to receive his very Holy Spirit to have the power to do that. And so the other Advent figure that the church presents us with is, of course, the one that is the Advent figure par excellence. It's Our Lady. And that's who I want to go into for today's homily, because some of you know that I returned this past Tuesday from a pilgrimage to Mexico City, where we visited the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And as chaplain, I helped Christopher West lead a busload of us. So 48 total pilgrims, 5 of us from St. John. Had an amazing 4 full days of there in Mexico City, and Our Lady really just did some incredible healing work amongst our pilgrims. Especially, there was a number of those who Our Lady just really worked on those who have felt distant from their mother growing up. She really healed some mother wounds there. There was a time of sharing, a sharing of graces at the end, and that was kind of like a theme running in through many of the testimonies. Anyway, I've been telling our parish all about it. On the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception on Wednesday, I was preaching about it there, both to the kids in the morning and the adults in the evening. Then the following day would be December 9th, the Feast of Juan Diego, to whom Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared. So, of course, I preached about her then. And then also on Friday at O Come Let Us Adore, we had purposely a dark church as we adored our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament. And it was that time that we used the theme that we used in the pilgrimage was to enter into the womb of Mary, because there we find Jesus, right? God chose to become one of us, and the first moment of that God among us was in the womb of Mary. What do we say at the end of the Hail Mary, or as part of the Hail Mary? Hey, blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. And so that was a powerful time. But now I just kind of want to get to the basics of the image itself and how it came about on this feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, because it is the third Sunday of Advent, but December 12 also happens to be the actual feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And so some of you may not know about the miraculous image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and so to really understand just how historically significant of a part Our Lady played, I want to provide some historical context. And I think we do have them projected. It was unfortunate that the other 2 masses couldn't see the projected image because it was all dark in here, and all we had was the central image here. But anyway, the Aztecs were the dominant tribe of Mexico, the area that is Mexico City today. And they were at war with a lot of the tribes around them. They would obtain prisoners from the other tribes in order to perform human sacrifice. And not only did they do that for others, but even they would take from their own selves in order to satiate what they had a very distorted view of gods, right? They saw them as having insatiable appetites for human sacrifice, as their art depicted. And they believed that human sacrifice was what sustained the cycle of the universe. And so, particularly the sun and its battle with the moon and things like, you know, these distorted views of the deity. So Hernan Cortez in 1519 would go there on behalf of Spain, and they encountered the Aztec Empire. They saw these gory rituals going on where, you know, they would cut open the chest and break out the beating heart. Except I'm not going to go into detail, but if you've ever seen the movie Apocalypto, it's not for the faint-hearted, but it is a well-done movie. And so, anyway, the Spanish would then form alliances with the other tribes who opposed the Aztecs, and they succeeded to overcome the Aztec Empire. Now, if the deities of the Aztecs were that horrible, then they probably thought the same of the deities of the conquistadores. You know, they projected their idea of God onto this God that the Spanish missionaries who came with the conquistadores, and the witness of the conquistadores did not help at all, right? Because here's the gospel, which says, love your enemies even. And the Spanish were certainly not doing that. They were abusive of the natives. And Bishop Zumárraga was known to be as the protector of the Indians. He tried to protect the people from the abuses and the enslavement that was carried out by this new Spanish government. And one assassination attempt, there was an assassination attempt upon Bishop Zumárraga, numerous threats against him and fellow priests. The bishop wrote to Emperor Charles V, detailing in a letter the many abuses against the native people. And he wrote that if God does not provide a solution from his own hand, this land is about to be completely lost. And God did provide a solution from his own hand that was a witness, a great witness against both the abuses of the Spanish and the brutality of the warring tribes of the Native Americans. And it would be Our Lady in her witness to a simple, humble man named Juan Diego. December 9th, 1531, he walks on the western side of Tepeyac Hill, and she calls out to Juan Diego, using the sweet diminutive, right? He says, Juanito, Juan Dieguito, my dearest son, know and understand well, you, my most humble son, that I am the ever Virgin Holy Mary, Mother of the true God for whom we live, the Creator of all things, Lord of heaven and earth. And imagine Juan Diego's like, you're what? The Mother of the true God? The Lord of heaven and earth? If that's not unbelievable enough, then this Mother of the Lord of heaven and earth also claims little Juan Diego as her own, as her dearest and most humble son. And then Our Lady sends Juan Diego on a mission. She tells him in these words, I wish that a temple be erected here quickly, so I may therein exhibit and give all my love, compassion, help, and protection, because I am your merciful mother. To you, to all the inhabitants of this land, and all the rest who love me, invoke and confide in me, listen to their lamentations and remedy all their miseries, afflictions, and sorrows. So friends, Our Lady truly wants to be our mother, not in just some pietistic, out there, devotional sense, but wants to help us in our afflictions and our anxieties. And she did that in a powerful way in many of these pilgrims that were with us. Some deep cathartic healing. And remember when Jesus was on the cross, this should be very special for us who are parishioners of St. John. We each and every one of us, the whole church is represented in John, all the sons and daughters of the church represented in St. John at the foot of the cross. And he turns to John and he says, "Behold your mother." Not just my mother, Jesus is saying, your mother. And he turns to Mary and says, "Woman, behold your son." And Mary at that point becomes the mother, the new mother of all the living. Notice the way Jesus addressed Mary, woman, indicative of Eve, the first Eve, who was named the mother of all the living. And when they had fallen, he says, it says to Satan, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, between her offspring and your offspring." And so by Jesus telling Eve that she is, "Woman, behold your mother," she becomes the new mother of all the living, and that relationship extends even to this day. She still mothers us as a spiritual mother in the way that she revealed to Saint Juan Diego. And so Our Lady wants us to go to her. And Our Lady says to Juan Diego, "Then go to the Bishop of Mexico, and you will say to him that I manifest my great desire, and here on this plain a temple be built to me. You will accurately relate all you have seen and admired and what you have heard. Be assured that I will be most grateful and will reward you. Behold, you have heard my mandate, my humble son. Go and put forth all your effort." Now the bishop, of course, doesn't believe such an incredible tale. So Juan Diego goes back to Tepeyac Hill to let Our Lady know that she should send somebody more illustrious so that the bishop will actually listen. But what's Our Lady's response? Sending you. You're my ambassador. So that, have you ever used that excuse for not doing your God-given mission? "Oh, who am I? I'm just I'm a nobody." And Our Lady has a different opinion of you. She sends you nonetheless. And so, Juan Diego then returns to the bishop, of course, and once again, this time he says, "Okay, I still don't believe you, but you got to show me a sign if I'm going to believe you." And so Our Lady says to come on Monday. Juan Diego reports this to Our Lady. She says, "Come on Monday," and she would give him that sign. But what happens? Juan Diego gets swallowed up in his anxiety because his uncle is deathly ill. Juan Diego fails to show up, and because he's trying to get a priest to do last rites and to hear his final confession. And so he thinks, if I go this way, I'm going to run to Our Lady. And so what does he do? He goes the other way, thinking he can avoid her. And guess what? Our Lady shows up there. And he says these words, these beautiful words to her: "Hear me and understand well, my little son, that nothing should frighten or grieve you. Let not your heart be disturbed. Do not fear that sickness nor any other sickness or anguish. Am I not here, who is your mother? Are you not under my protection? Am I not your health? Are you not happily in my fold of the mantle? What else do you wish? Do not grieve nor be disturbed by anything." Do not grieve or be disturbed by anything. And so Our Lady tells Juan Diego that her uncle is cured. And she actually appears in the house of Juan Bernardino, who was lying sick. And then that frees Juan Diego to go about his mission again. She tells Juan Diego to go up to the top of the hill, gather these Castilian roses that weren't supposed to be growing at that time because of the frost. Gathers them up in this tilma, like this, collects all the roses, heads to the bishop. He's detained at the door, but then he said he's not going to show anything until he gets to the bishop. They finally acquiesce, and he gets there, and we know what happens, right? Not only is there the Castilian roses, but as he opens his tilma, this image, miraculous image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, is there. And that same image still exists today, 500 years later, and it changes the course of history for the whole continent, right? Because that basilica, obviously the bishop believes at this point. He received the sign, and it has become the most visited Catholic shrine with annually 10 to 20 million visitors a year, which is even more than the sites in the Holy Land and in Rome, St. Peter's Basilica. So Our Lady is present supernaturally through this miraculous image. They've recreated the same fiber because that fiber is only supposed to last not even 100 years, and here we are 500 years later. And their replicas, after about 10 years, all the paint had most of its color had faded and the fabric worn out. So its very existence is a miracle. Because not only that, but they left the tilma unprotected for 116 years without any glass in front of it. So it endured humidity, the candles, the smoke from the candles, people touching it with their hands and with their rosaries and other images. And in 1946, a study was done to confirm that it was agave cactus fiber, which doesn't last very long, right? And it tends to absorb moisture from the air and is easily destroyed. And also you had the humidity from the basilica. In short, it's impossible that it has survived these 500 years. Even in 1921, the news covered an incident of an anti-Catholic terrorist that planted a bomb right in front of the image. And in the bouquet of flowers, it was hidden. And when it exploded, it smashed the windows around, damaged the marble altar, and there's a crucifix here that you can still see that day that is completely bent because of that blast. But the pane of glass and the image itself was left unscathed. So also, the image on the back of the tilma, there's a mirror image, exact mirror image of what appears from the front. Now, who's going to paint the back of a tilma, right? And so that shows, that implies that it was created in like one instant on both sides. Because when they did put it to the microscope, they can't see any brush strokes either. So it truly is a miraculous image. But the important thing is what this image actually symbolizes, because it spoke directly to the heart and minds of the Native American peoples. You know, we as the West, we speak in words. We convey ideas through words. But a lot of ancient civilizations would convey their language through images and glyphs, right? And even us now, with social media and whatnot, we're starting to become a more image-based culture in our emoticons and avatars and emojis and all that stuff, right? Well, they've been doing that for centuries. And so this spoke directly, it spoke a language. It's like a codex. And this mantle that Mary would wear would be the mantle, the kind of mantle worn by an empress or royalty. So she was seen as the queen, and also notice all the stars on this blue background on her mantle. that symbolizes the heavens. But her tunic, that pink earthen hue, symbolizes the earth, because on that tunic is also flowers and growth, earth and growth. And so that represents heaven, her tunic represents earth, and the little man at the bottom, if you see there, with wings, his left hand is holding the tunic that represents earth, and his right hand is holding the mantle that represents heaven. So in her is the unity of heaven and earth. Within her, in fact, is the unity of heaven and earth. And how do people know that there is something within her even? Right? Well, it's kind of puzzling because she has a hairstyle that indicates that she's a virgin. The way unmarried women of that time and place would wear their hair that way indicates that she's a virgin. But notice that little black ribbon belt, the black ribbon belt right above her womb, that was worn by people who were pregnant. And so it's showing that she is a virgin mother, but mother of whom? Well, right over her womb, you see that petal, the 4 petals, that was the Aztec sign for divinity. And so this speaks loudly and clearly that she is the queen of heaven and earth, the virgin mother of God. And not only that, she's not only, just like she revealed herself to Juan Diego as the mother of the true living God, she's also our mother. Because look at her appearance. She's a mestiza in this image. A mestiza was one of mixed race. She's not only Spanish descent, but she's also of Native American descent. And so she is an image of racial harmony because she's the mother of all the living. And so when the Native Americans saw that, she's one of our own. And the impact of this image and how Our Lady used it to draw people to herself and to have a place to take all their miseries and sorrows and so that she could be a mother to them, that resulted in the first 7 years, 9 million Native Americans getting baptized and becoming Christians, and thus having to surrender the savage human sacrifice and the lack of regard for the sanctity of each and every human person, right? And it was this image of peace and the motherhood of all the living that drew them to the person who was in the womb of Our Lady. And that is the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ. And so she changed the course of history. And she still does, as we found out personally for ourselves as we visited her shrine. So I'll just close with that last few words that Our Lady gave to Juan Diego there. Because so many of us are, these troubling times are riddled with anxiety. Are you anxious about anything? There's plenty of things to be anxious about, right? And maybe we're perplexed by St. Paul's command to rejoice always. How can he say that? But it's not like St. Paul was living a comfy life, right? His life was always at risk. When he was in hostile territory proclaiming the good news, he didn't know whether he'd live to see another day. He was tortured repeatedly, shipwrecked, imprisoned, and ultimately beheaded. So talk about reason to be anxious and filled with fear. And yet, that's the person that's telling us today on Gaudete Sunday, rejoice always. Again, I say rejoice, in case we didn't get it the first time. And he says, have no anxiety at all. Him who had every reason to be anxious. So how can I do that? And what if I'm having trouble doing that? Well, the other Advent figure, go to her. Take her as your mother. when, when we listen to our Mother Mary, we have to also take her in as our mother first, because if not, if we don't experience that intimacy with her, her words will ring hollow. But if we know her maternal affection and her protection, so much so that we know that the words she spoke to Juan Diego, she's speaking to us, and that they're true. Am I not here who is your mother? Are you not happily in my fold? Do not grieve, nor be disturbed by anything.